King Arthur rallied his band of warrior druids at one of the most sacred sites of the ancient world. Dressed in white robes, carrying swords and staffs, and occasionally checking their iPhones, his religious order gathered under the towering megaliths of Stonehenge. This was not 1,500 years ago, but a blustery, drizzly morning last week. And leading the ceremony was not King Arthur, but a 62-year-old man who was born John Timothy Rothwell. 30 years ago, Rothwell became convinced he was the reincarnation of King Arthur and legally changed his name to King Arthur Other Pendragon. Before this transformation, he was a British Army soldier and a member of a biker gang. Now he is a pagan priest, a sword bearer, and the chieftain druid of this anachronistic creed. NBC News visited him and a few dozen of his followers as they gathered at Stonehenge for the spring equinox last week. Halfway between the shortest and longest days of the year, this was one of the most important events in the Druid calendar. Arthur is one of some 4,000 people who identify themselves as Druids in the UK, according to government figures. As an eco-warrior, Arthur has been arrested dozens of times in relation to various alleged missteps committed by officialdom around Stonehenge. He has also run for election to the British Parliament several times.
Reuters reports that according to a U.S. think tank, satellite imagery of North Korea's main nuclear test site taken over the weekend indicates that Pyongyang could be in the final stages of preparations for a sixth nuclear test. Washington-based 38 North, a website that monitors North Korea, said the images from Saturday showed the continued presence of vehicles and trailers at the Pyongyang test site and signs that communication cables may have been laid to a test tunnel. Another 38 North report said recent satellite images of North Korea's nuclear research center at Yongbyon showed rail and vehicle movements that could indicate a plan to resume reprocessing of spent fuel rods to produce plutonium for bomb fuel.
The Associated Press reports that 3 storm chasers were killed in a crash during severe West Texas storms on Tuesday. Tornadoes were reported near the location of the crash at a remote intersection close to the town of Spur. Storm chasers Kelly Jean Williamson, Randall Delane Yarnell, and Corbin Lee Yeager were killed instantly when their vehicles collided at the rural crossroads. Forecasters predict that 19 million people in Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana could see tornadoes as the threat continues to shift eastward.
Democrats threaten an all-night filibuster to delay an initial procedural vote for the ban on abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected. A GOP-led House committee was scheduled to vote on the provision Tuesday night. It was added to a separate bill that would ban most abortions at 20 weeks of pregnancy. The new version would include several abortion restrictions. If the heartbeat proposal goes into effect, it would be the strictest ban in the United States. Democrats criticized the legislation in an afternoon press conference and vowed to delay the committee vote, though they don't have the legislative power to stop the bill's advancement. Their filibuster tactic could also be ended through chamber rules.
In a rare appearance since the presidential election, former nominee Hillary Clinton spoke to women at the Professional Business Women of California conference on Tuesday. Clinton addressed gender inequality in the tech industry and aligned herself with employees who have spoken out against sexism. Clinton said, "We need to reset the table so women are no longer required to accept and adapt to sexism at work." Her remarks come at the heels of a series of sexual harassment allegations brought against rideshare giant Uber.
Afghanistan plans to double the number of elite special forces from 17,000 troops. This is part of a long-term strategy to bolster units stretched and exhausted by persistent attacks from Taliban insurgents and other Islamist militants. Special forces, who represent a small fraction of the 300,000 strong armed forces, have been carrying out nearly 70% of the Army's offensive operations across the country, which underline Afghanistan's heavy reliance on them. While regular forces, including police, are deployed largely to defend positions, special forces are taking the battle to militants from Kunduz, sometimes working in tandem with U.S. counterparts. Under current plans, special forces would double, and the government is talking to foreign donors about contributing through funding and other assistance. Recruitment and training was already underway for more commandos, as well as special forces support units like medical care, intelligence, logistics, and communications.
Cambodia banned the sale and export of breast milk March 28th after suspending it last week. United States-based company Ambrosia Labs had been exporting breast milk sourced from Cambodian mothers for 2 years. According to the company's website, it was sold as a safe alternative for those who can't produce their own breast milk. Export was initially suspended while the Ministry of Health investigated the effect it had on Cambodian mothers and children and whether the practice violated organ trafficking laws. UNICEF was critical of the practice and told Reuters that breast milk's, quote, commercialization in Cambodia should not be supported. And a letter signed by the Secretary of State, Cambodia's Council of Ministers, said, quote, even though we are still poor, we are not so poor that we have to sell human breast milk. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
CNN has reported that, according to a Lagos, Nigeria High Court judge, consumers of Sprite and Fanta have more to worry about than rotting teeth. The court held that high levels of benzoic acid and sunset additives in the popular soft drinks could pose a health risk to consumers when mixed with ascorbic acid, commonly known as vitamin C. Justice Adedayo Oyebanji ordered the Nigerian bottling company to place written warnings on Fanta and Sprite bottles against drinking them with vitamin C, and awarded costs equivalent to $6,350 against the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control for failing to ensure health standards.
Tropical cyclone Debbie blasted into Australia's northeast coast Tuesday, bringing devastating winds and rain. The astronauts on board the International Space Station got a dramatic view of the burgeoning storm, and NASA released a video showing the powerful system from orbit. The video lasts nearly 8 minutes and shows the curve of the planet as Debbie comes into view. The perspective makes the cyclone's circular formation look absolutely huge. Debbie is already weakening after making landfall, but flash flooding concerns remain. NASA released an astounding time-lapse video of 3 separate hurricanes in 2016.
People are moving to urban areas where it's harder to be part of the wild. This disconnect dramatically increases the odds that kids will get sick. It may even detract from kids' abilities to mature into happy, well-adjusted adults. A frog in the hand, as it turns out, may be a sort of microbial medicine. There is some evidence that to increase your kids' odds of being allergy-free, they need to be exposed to many kinds of microbes. This exposure teaches their immune system which microbes are good, which are bad, and which are neither. Billions of microbes live on your skin. They also live in your gut, mouth, and virtually everywhere else on your body. They form incredibly complex interconnected communities called microbiomes that scientists are just beginning to understand and appreciate. Human beings rely on these microorganisms for their health and very existence. But the shift to urban environments has caused some of these species to disappear. Their absence puts all of us, including in some cases our kids, at greater risk for allergies, asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, dementia, and other maladies. Kids raised in rural environments rarely had autoimmune disorders or allergy-related conditions. In urban areas, these disorders are much more common. We need to reconnect our kids with the microbes they need, and more generally, with the wild they need, however tiny that wild may be.
A Detroit district judge approved a settlement on Tuesday which would bring $100 million state dollars to take out corroded water lines in Flint, Michigan. The nearly $100 million will go towards tearing out lead or galvanized steel water lines to at least 18,000 Flint homes by 2020. $10 million of the settlement will be set aside for unexpected extra expenses. Governor Rick Snyder said that the deal mirrors the state's commitment to providing the resources necessary for the residents of Flint to recover from the crisis.
A Seattle federal judge refused to dismiss a lawsuit brought on behalf of tens of thousands of immigrants who were not made aware of the one-year deadline to apply for asylum. The case concerns immigrants who were found to have credible fear of persecution in their home country. According to lawyers, those released from immigration custody pending deportation proceedings were not told about the deadline to apply for asylum. The suit alleges that due to backlogs in the immigration system, asylum seekers aren't often scheduled to appear in court for over a year, thus missing the deadline.
A lawsuit filed in a New York district court alleges that Port Authority police officers engage in a pattern of wrongfully arresting men that officers perceive as gay or gender nonconforming. The suit is being brought by Legal Aid Society, a nonprofit that serves low-income New Yorkers in fighting the practice of baseless charges for things such as public lewdness and exposure. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as well as the PAPD, have declined to comment on the litigation.
On Tuesday, the president of the National Association of Theater Owners expressed himself against President Donald Trump during his CinemaCon address. John Fithian, NATO's CEO, appealed to the annual convention of movie exhibitors for continued support of globalization in the film industry to support free trade and the immigrant talent abroad. Fithian then slammed Trump by referencing his withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership by saying exhibitors around the world, as we know, lose billions of dollars each year to piracy. The losses would be much greater if not for global cooperation.
On Tuesday, a U.S. federal judge approved a plan that will require Michigan state officials to replace water lines serving 18,000 homes in the city of Flint over the next 3 years. Under the plan, which was approved by District Judge David Lawson in Detroit, Michigan, will pay at least $97 million to replace water lines containing lead or galvanized steel by the year 2020. The settlement is the result of multiple lawsuits filed last year by the National Resources Defense Council and American Civil Liberties Union against state and city officials.
North Carolina is continuing to lose money over bathroom access for transgender people. According to Reuters, the NCAA has threatened to deny North Carolina lucrative hosting duties for college championship events through 2022 if the state does not change its infamous bathroom laws. North Carolina is the only state that bars transgender people from using government-run restrooms that match their gender identity. Supporters of the law passed by the state's Republican-controlled legislature say it is needed for public safety. Opponents maintain that the law is unnecessary and discriminatory.
On Monday, following comments by the U.S. Attorney General, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said that the city will be at risk of terror attacks if Jeff Sessions slashes fundings for federal law enforcement in sanctuary cities. In a statement, de Blasio said, "Any attempt to cut NYPD funding for the nation's top terror target will be aggressively fought in court. We won't back down from protecting New Yorkers from terror or from an overzealous administration fixated on xenophobia and needless division." The comments come in response to the latest crackdown on sanctuary cities by Donald Trump's administration.
Reuters reports that U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry pushed for opening Nevada's Yucca Mountain nuclear waste site in a meeting with the state's governor on Monday, but the local leader said he remains staunchly opposed to the project. The visit with Governor Brian Sandoval was Perry's first official travel since becoming Energy Secretary. The multi-billion-dollar nuclear storage project, which was rejected by former President Barack Obama, has been championed by the Trump administration. Most of Nevada's politicians question the long-term safety of the site and the transportation of radioactive waste through the state.
Protesters clash with police in Paris over the killing of a Chinese man in his home. A group of angry demonstrators broke down barricades and threw projectiles at officers during a March 27th protest. Authorities said 35 people were arrested and 3 officers were injured during the demonstration. 56-year-old Xiao Liu was allegedly shot in front of his children during a raid of his property by police on March 26th. Police noted the officer fired in self-defense after Liu wounded an officer with a bladed weapon. Liu's family disputes the account and noted he was only holding a pair of scissors to debone fish. According to the local, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesman urged Paris to guarantee the safety and legal rights of Chinese citizens in the country. French authorities have opened an inquiry into the shooting. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
After years of passing for black, Rachel Dolezal's truth was very suddenly exposed in 2015. Living in obscurity in Spokane, Washington, the head of the local chapter of the NAACP was forced to resign after her story was unraveled by a local news reporter who asked her point blank, "Are you African American?" Dolezal didn't have an answer. She infamously left the frame, caught off guard. In the media frenzy that followed, Dolezal admitted that while she was born to Caucasian parents, she identified as a black woman. In her new memoir, In Full Color, Finding My Place in a Black and White World, Dolezal provides some context about how a challenging upbringing shaped her search for identity as a black or trans-black woman.
On Tuesday, officials from so-called sanctuary cities met in New York to discuss their response to threats made from the Trump administration to cut off funding to cities and states that failed to assist federal authorities to arrest illegal immigrants. On Monday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions threatened to strip U.S. Justice Department grants from cities and other local governments that choose to shield illegal immigrants from deportation efforts under President Donald Trump. Tuesday's meeting in New York marked the second straight day of cities working together on the immigration issue.
The Scottish Parliament has voted in favor of holding an independence referendum. Lawmakers voted 69 to 59 on March 28th in favor of the referendum called for by Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Sturgeon is aiming to hold the vote for late 2018 or early 2019. She says the vote shouldn't come until the terms of the UK's separation from the European Union are clear, no earlier than 18 months. The majority of voters in Scotland voted to remain in the EU during the Brexit referendum. In a 2014 independence referendum, Scotland voted 55% to 45% to stay in the UK. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has repeatedly cautioned against the independence vote, saying, quote, "Now is not the time." She believes the two countries should work together on Brexit negotiations before discussing separation. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
This town is the first in Somalia that refugees camp to when they return home from the Dadaab camp in northeastern Kenya. Some have been away for more than 10 years. They load up trucks that will take them on the next leg of their journey, carrying all they could from a camp they called home for so many years. They're apprehensive but also excited. I'll try to farm like before. I know there's a drought, but that's all right. It will come to end, says Isha Abdikadir. About 600 returnees were at the reception center when we visited. They gave up their refugee status back in Dadaab and received some startup cash and basic supplies from the United Nations Refugee Agency.
From here, these returnees will go farther south to Kismayo or Baidoa, where they'll be given a little more money by UNHCR and then make the difficult decision on whether to stay there or go to their villages.
Hassan Ahmed was 1 year old when his parents escaped Somalia's civil war in the 1990s. They're dead now, and he says there's nothing left for him at the camp in Kenya.
There are no jobs. Even if I have gone to school, I was hoping for resettlement to the US, but that is now not likely. So that's why I have decided to go back home.
In another corner of Doble, another group of displaced people. They've only recently arrived, escaping drought in parts of southern Somalia that the returnees are going back to. More than 500 are living rough in this settlement. If they can't get much help here, they say they'll try to go to Dadaab.
The drought is bad. People have lost their livestock and the land is bare. There's no water, there's cholera, and people are dying. The heat is taking a toll on the children.
Dozens of families like this one have already made it to the Dadaab camp in Kenya. Hawa Ali Nuro told us her 3-year-old boy died on the way here. Hungry and thirsty, the journey was just too tough for him.
We didn't come by car. We walked for 30 days. There's a woman who also gave birth on the way. We suffered a lot.
Back in Doble, the Somalis who've returned home prepare for a long, dusty, arduous journey to their final destinations. Those we talk to are not ruling out returning to Dadaab if things get too tough at home. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Doble, Somalia.
On Tuesday, the Justice Department has said that 3 Iraqi refugees in Virginia have been charged with immigration fraud after failing to reveal their relationship with a man who was involved in the kidnapping of a U.S. citizen in Iraq. Yusuf al-Mashandi, his brother, and his brother's wife were arrested on Tuesday and charged with attempting to obtain naturalization as U.S. citizens in a manner contrary to law. While applying for his citizenship, Mashandi's fingerprints matched those found at the site of a U.S. citizen kidnapping in Iraq in 2004.
On Tuesday, California prosecutors charged 2 anti-abortion activists for filming undercover videos of themselves attempting to buy fetal tissue from Planned Parenthood. David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt were charged with 15 felonies for having invaded the privacy of medical providers by filming without consent. Prosecutors say they used a fake bioresearch company to meet with women's healthcare providers and secretly record them. In an email to the Associated Press, Daleiden claimed the charges came from, quote, Planned Parenthood's political cronies.
Tuesday morning, another breach at the White House. CBS News Online reported that the Secret Service announced an investigation into a suspicious package near White House grounds. The suspect in the matter is in custody at this time. The Secret Service took to Twitter to share updates on the situation, posting tweets to announce road closures and reorganizing members of the media to other areas for safety. According to a Secret Service spokesperson, at 10:15 a.m., a male suspect approached a uniformed Division U.S. Secret Service officer in the area of 15th and Pennsylvania Ave. The person had a suspicious package.
There is no love lost between Hong Kong police and the leaders of the Occupy movement. They faced each other for 3 months during occasionally violent protests. Last month, 7 police officers were jailed for attacking an Occupy activist, who himself is now in prison. Now, more than 2 years after the occupation of central Hong Kong ended, some of those who helped to organize the protests have been charged. One of them is Tanya Chan, a legislator and barrister.
It's easily related to the 7 police officers who assaulted Ken Tsang, as well as some other following events. So,
you think it's connected?
Well, I think they want people to relate these 2 events.
The accused were charged just 24 hours after Carrie Lam was selected as Hong Kong's next leader, when she promised to heal the city's deep divisions. Benny Tai is a founder of the Occupy movement. He told the crowd he might face a long legal battle, but whatever the outcome, the fight for universal suffrage would go on. On Monday, Carrie Lam met the outgoing chief executive CY Leung, who's taken a hardline approach to civil dissent and has just been appointed to China's top advisory body. He's also under investigation for corruption.
Carrie Lam insists she didn't know about these arrests in advance, but government critics question the timing of the move, suggesting the authorities may have delayed their case against the activist until after the election so as not to damage her campaign.
Lam denies the arrests were politically motivated, reminding the media it was the Department of Justice, an independent body, that makes decisions on prosecutions. Adrian Brown, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
U.S. nuclear developer Westinghouse Electric Company may be going bankrupt. According to Reuters, this is a concern for President Donald Trump's administration and a potential national security issue. Pittsburgh-based Westinghouse plans to seek bankruptcy protection from creditors on Tuesday as it struggles to limit losses. In addition to building civilian nuclear reactors, Westinghouse has been the leading supplier of reactors for nuclear-powered U.S. military vehicles. Any bankruptcy would be filed in Japan, where Westinghouse's parent company Toshiba is based. According to a White House official, the Trump administration is in close communication with the Japanese monitoring the situation.